All right, I'll get us started with a few housekeeping things. So first is our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine. We're going to talk about the program and an overview, talk about student assistantships and financial aid, talk about the application process, including deadlines. We'll talk a little bit about Cleveland, Ohio, which is where Case Western Reserve is located, and we'll do a Q&A towards the end. So as you are listening to us, and if you have questions, feel free to submit through the Q&A feature here on Zoom. You can go ahead and send them right in at any point. We'll keep an eye on them. Some will answer as we go. Others will wait till the end to answer. You can send them both with your name or anonymously. Either way works. All right, and I would like to introduce our host today. So first up, we have Dr. Mark Aulisio. He is the Susan E. Watson Chair and Professor of Bioethics, and also the Director for the Center for Biomedical Ethics at Metro Health Medical Center. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more?
Sure. So I chair the department. I've been here at Case Western and involved at Metro since around 2000. My background is analytic philosophy, moral and political, but I've done clinical bioethics all my career, and am happy to have a foot still in the clinical setting, doing ethics consults, serving on an ethics committee, doing regular ethics education and other work at Metro. So I'm looking forward to telling you a little bit about our program, and what you should be thinking about along the way is whether we're a good fit for you. And if we are in your mind, then you can apply, and we can make the same kind of judgment on our side. Leah?
Thanks, Mark. We also have Sam Hamilton with us. She's the Assistant Director of Enrollment Management for the School of Medicine. Sam, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I end up assisting the Department of Bioethics, specifically their master's program. And then I also work with several other programs that are within the School of Medicine, helping with enrollment initiatives, making sure that emails go out, webinars like this are happening, you guys know about them, so that way you can figure out if this would be a good fit for you. And I help in those types of capacities. So happy to be here. I'm the person hitting record today. That's my main charge.
And you're very good at it, Sam. Thanks. And I'm Dr. Leah Jeanette. I'm the Assistant Director of Education and a Senior Research Associate in the Department of Bioethics. I do some teaching, some admin in the department, both of which I really enjoy. I also do clinical ethics. I've worked with Dr. Aulisio the last couple of years, learning a lot from him. He's so knowledgeable about clinical ethics. But I also am interested in adolescent health as well. So we're excited to have everybody here. And Mark, I will turn it over to you to get us started.
Okay, so first a little bit about the School of Medicine. The CWRU School of Medicine has long been an innovator in medical education, also in research and service. And these metrics are, you've got to take them all with a grain of salt, because you have to look at how schools get ranked, what the criteria really are. And US News use a lot of reputational metrics, which can be, it's kind of fuzzy data. But we're definitely, viewed as the top medical school of medicine in Ohio. Depending on what metrics you use, 24 in the US. One of the things I want to say, though, when it comes to education, the MCATs for the School of Medicine the last 3 years have been 97th percentile 3 years ago, 96, 98. I'm not sure what our most recent ones are, but those are the average percentile MCAT scores of our students. Our graduate programs are also superb, among the best in the country. So go ahead to the next slide. The kind of research that is done at the School of Medicine in its various basic science departments, bridge departments. Ours is considered a basic science department. You have genetics and genomics as a bridge department. Pathology is a bridge department. we have, 7th in the nation in publication impact, and actually among the top in the world as well. And NIH research funding, depending on how you add it up, and our department is included in this. We have several R01s in research funded by NHGRI or other NIH institutes. We're either 23, or if you count Lerner, which we're allowed to do, which is the Lerner Research Institute at the Cleveland Clinic, one of our affiliates, it's more like 14. So it's really interesting to consider how metrics are made, but by pretty much any measure. This is Case Western Reserve School of Medicine, or Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine is really one of the premier schools of medicine in the country and in the world. So for you, what you're thinking about is less global about the School of Medicine and its excellence, and more about bioethics and medical humanities, both generally and our specific program. And one of the questions you should ask yourself, right, is why study bioethics and medical humanities? And my view of this is, well, I mean, right now it's sort of an easy thing to explain, right? If you think about allocation of scarce medical resource protocols, critical care resources, ventilator beds during COVID surge, front and center was a lot of bioethics and medical humanities discussion about the kinds of values that should drive these allocation decisions, and the kinds of values and other embedded concerns that are in existing allocation mechanism, right? Both so on the critique side, but also on the construction side. If you think about vaccine allocation right now, who should get what's coming out from the advisory committee on immunization practices of the CDC with its 1A, 1B, 1C prioritization metrics. Those metrics embed certain kinds of values. And if you are interested in what we would call the normative dimensions of the delivery and practice of healthcare, biomedicine, the life sciences, bioethics and medical humanities might be for you. I mean, if you think about bioethics and medical humanities as a constellation of issues that are sufficiently complex, value laden, that they need multiple lenses, multiple points of view, multiple perspectives, multiple tools brought to bear for us to understand the issues in question, to identify some of the sensitive spots, the value conflicts, the uncertainties, and to find a way to move forward that takes seriously the kinds of considerations that we sort of, as a community, think should drive decision-making, then bioethics and medical humanities study might be for you, right? So big questions: what kinds of values should inform policy and practice? What kinds of values appear to be embedded in existing structures, right? We're worried about structural racism and systemic bias, and that's been a big issue of attention over the last year. But for some of us, we've known about it for a lot more than the last year, right? But we're turning societal attention there. Can we ensure that justice and respect for persons is really carried forward and honored in research and clinical practice? There's really interesting history in research ethics with the Nuremberg trials and the concerns about the Nazi doctors, the emergence of codes of protection for human subjects in research. And then on the clinical side, when you think about cases like Karen Quinlan in the 70s and Nancy Cruzan, 1980, or Nancy Cruzan, 1990. You think about the kinds of major, landmark cases that shaped certain areas of clinical practice. These are inherently interesting across multiple perspectives and disciplines. And of course, bioethics and medical humanities can feed into career concerns. Go ahead. If you think about career path, all right, here's how we think about it, at least in our program, is, bioethics and medical humanities interprofessional. It's inherently that. It's multidisciplinary. It's interdisciplinary. And the way we think about bioethics and medical humanities, especially an MA in bioethics and medical humanities, is that it's either a companion degree, so it's a companion to a professional degree, either now or later, right? So a JD, an MD, MSN, you name it, right? Lots of different areas of MSW, social work. In case it's MSSA, it's what it's called. So companion degree to a professional degree, or an on-the-way degree to potentially a PhD. And lots of different career paths can bioethics and medical humanities inform, right? So if you're thinking about medicine, nursing, social work, any of the allied healths, there's obvious relevance there, right? But there's also relevance if you're on your way to doctoral level work and you want to use, for example, the tools of the social sciences, one or the other of the social sciences, to tease apart and better understand some aspect of one of the issues that comprise this constellation of issues that we call, bioethics and medical humanities. And one of the things that's really come to the fore in our program over the last 5 or 6 years is the role of a kind of a gap year, a year before you head off to med school or law school, where you try to jump into a PhD program, to figure out what you really want to do. And we've had plenty of students, I don't know if it's the majority, but a good percentage, who've used the program as a way to kind of sort out, do I really want to be an MD? Maybe I'm more interested in being a physician assistant. And we've had students go that way. Gee, I thought I wanted to be somebody who worked in front lines of clinical practice, but I realize I'm much more interested in policy questions. I think I'm going to go that direction. In fact, just a year ago, we had a superb student who was so good that she got into the med school while she was in high school, came to Case Western and had a clear path, undergrad straight to med school, and got so interested in bioethics and medical humanities that she decided, I want a policy career, and decided to pair her MA that she did with us with a law degree. And she's at NYU right now. So there are lots of possibilities here, including discernment for the undecided. Okay. So our program in particular, oh yes, this is our 20 years as a department, and this will be, I think, the 26th year for our master's program. It started in 95, 96. It is a one-year program, 30 credits. If you do first semester, second semester, if you're full-time, you do 15 credits each semester. You can complete the program in 1 year, and it's what most students do. We do have some part-timers. We do have some dual degree folks. So, it takes them longer to complete the program because they're either, if they're going part-time, they're working, raising children, whatever. Or if you're doing a dual degree, obviously, you're doing an MD, MA, for example, you're going to do the program over a longer stretch. But we have patterns of enrollment and programs of study that help you navigate those things if you find yourself in that boat. Our program does allow, in a normal year, clinical observation through our clinical rotations. And we have, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but we have superb affiliate academic teaching hospital institutions in the clinic, University Hospitals, Cleveland Medical Center, Metro Health, and the Louis B. Stokes VA. We do personalized advising, both for selection of courses, of course, but also career trajectory. We do offer student assistantships, primarily in the form of partial tuition waivers, and of course the full array of standard federal financial aid and other is available to our students. So what does the program look like, right? So a typical, this gives you a good sense of what you might call a pattern of enrollment would look like for the one-year program If you're not dual degree, you're not part-time, you're 1 year full-time. So the core seminar that sort of really the heart of the program, along with the clinical rotations, is called Foundations in Bioethics. And this meets Tuesday, Thursday evenings, and it's 6 credits first semester, 6 credits second semester. And the concept is that you get a broad overview of the major areas of bioethics and medical humanities, and you also get in places what you might call a deeper dive, right? So a typical fall semester would include areas like approaches to bioethics and medical humanities, where you look at, okay, what is bioethics? What are the different methods of what is medical humanities? What are the different methods that people employ or approaches in looking at issues in bioethics and medical humanities? Then you might have, we've done it different ways in different years, but you could go from there into sort of reproductive ethics and beginning of life issues, right? And then you could do pediatric ethics, and after that you might do death and dying and focus on adult clinical ethics. That's a kind of one way of thinking about the first semester. Second semester, we tend to do issues like public health ethics, research ethics, neuroethics, justice concerns in bioethics and medical humanities generally. Typically, well, we alter this from year to year. We've done a radical revision for the virtual reality of the delivery of courses this particular year, right, with COVID. But generally, what you're looking at are short unit assignments, writing assignment, maybe 7 to 10 pages for each topic area. These courses are team taught, so you get faculty teaching their specialization. We think it's a real strength of our program that we can expose you to the specializations of our faculty. And actually, we bring folks in who are not primary faculty. It might be secondary faculty, or they might be members, people who are clinical affiliates, to teach their areas of specialization. So that gives you a little sense of the flavor, a little sense of what Foundations in Bioethics is like. We also have clinical rotations that are typically 80 hours of clinical observation at one of our clinical affiliates. And since we have 2 public hospital affiliates, the VA and Metro, and 2 private hospital affiliates that are more similar, the Cleveland Clinic and University Hospitals, we try to put you in one public setting, one private setting. You'll get observation in a broad array of areas, but what you'll also get is a chance to see the specialties of our different, affiliate hospitals. So just to give you an example, if you're at Metro Health, that's the region's main burn unit, and you're going to get exposure to burn ethics and an experience in the burn unit at Metro Health. Well, you can't get that at the Cleveland Clinic. They don't have that, right? If you're at the Louis B. Stokes VA, you're going to see an array of programs that are specific to veteran healthcare, right? Because it's a VA, and you're not going to get that at university hospitals, right? So we try to accentuate the unique strengths when it comes to clinical observation opportunities of each affiliate, but we also try to give you a public experience, a private experience, and then, palliative care / hospice are part of the clinical rotations as well. What you do during your 10-week clinical rotation, ideally you do about 8 hours of observation. You keep a journal, you log your hours, and you look for, okay, what kinds of things am I seeing that I should bring back to a preceptor group discussion that we'll have for 1 to 2 hours on site each week with your peers who are rotating at that institution. And then you come together as a group, you discuss the ethical, legal, and other issues you see, sometimes social issues, sometimes other altogether. You also will, during the course of that time, you'll have guided discussion with preceptors who are there at that institution or have great familiarity with the institution. But you also do a couple of case write-ups as part of the clinical rotations, okay? First semester and second semester, you'll have an opportunity for each semester for 2-3 credit hour electives to give you a sense of what those are like. We have electives from within our department, like ethics and genetics, which is being offered this semester, reproductive ethics, clinical ethics theory and practice, ethical issues in adolescent medicine, just to give you a sense of the kinds of electives we offer. And then we have electives that are approved for the bioethics curriculum, but are not offered by our department. They're graduate level and they're offered by other departments in the School of Medicine or departments in other schools altogether. So for example, there's a very popular death and dying course that our students often take that's offered by the Mandel School of Applied Social Sciences, so the social work school. Just to give you one example, there's a very popular health law and bioethics course that is offered by the law school. And then we have a mini elective, so a kind of fun thing, but it's still, you know, legitimate academic engagement. But to give you a sense of what the mini electives can be like, one of our popular ones is Star Trek and bioethics, which is kind of fun. Second semester, you would have your capstone, which is a 22 to 25 page paper that would be on a topic of mutual agreement between you and a faculty reader. You would meet regularly with that faculty person throughout the semester as you progress on that paper. And then ultimately, you know, you move from review of the literature to structuring and organizing the paper with outline to draft and multiple drafts, and then eventually you've got your final product. But the idea is that your capstone is really a bioethics and medical humanities capstone that, as people like to say, is a deep dive on an issue in bioethics and medical humanities that you have mutual interest in with one of our faculty. Okay, so that's what a typical full-time first semester, second semester might look like. We also have some concentrations. The default concentration you might call the bioethics concentration. If you declare a concentration, you don't have to, but if you do, we have a few to pick from. One is medicine, society, and culture. So if you think about those 2 semesters and what they look like, how I describe them, here's the modest alterations. You will take a core course the first semester called Foundations of Medicine, Society, and Culture, and that will take up one of those elective slots in the first semester for a 3 credit hour elective, right? But this is dedicated for this concentration. You will do a Medicine, Society, and Culture seminar, which is a 1.5 hour, mostly speaker series that's university-wide, and you'll hear from folks who do art therapy, history of medicine, lots of other really interesting areas that are, of course, humanities focused. And that's 1.5 hour. So that takes your kind of fun 1.5 hour elective. And then your other electives, both first and second semester, all but one, but ideally all, would be electives that are approved as relevant by the Medicine, Society, and Culture leadership for the concentration. And by the way, the leadership is Professor Eileen Anderson-Fye, who's a medical anthropologist, nationally and internationally known, and Jonathan Sadowski, who is a historian of medicine, who's done critically acclaimed books and most recently on the history of depression, and just before that on electroshock therapy. Really interesting stuff. And those two together co-direct our medicine, society, and culture concentration. You'll have clinical rotations as described, as I described from the previous slide, with your 80 hours of observation, or you might have a practicum placement specific to medicine, society, and culture concerns. And we're trying to build up that area. So one of the groups, for example, locally here in Cleveland that we've worked with, who could provide a practicum that would be relevant for medicine, society, and culture concentrators, is a group called Neighborhood and Family Practice. And you could see some of the broader, social challenges that neighborhood and family practice patients and families deal with, given the population that outreach serves. There's also a monthly reading group, which is a really nice way to kind of cohere, develop some cohesion as an MSc group, and that's led by some fantastic folks, including Professors Sadowski and Fye. Next. We also have a research ethics concentration, and this is probably the one concentration where we don't think about our MA as a standalone degree. There are very few master's degrees that are standalone, and those that are standalone terminal tend to be on the clinical side, right? So if you did a master's of nursing, that allows you in a clinical setting, assuming you pass your boards and everything, that allows you kind of maximal opportunity for clinical practice in the clinical setting. And so for all intents and purposes on the practice side, it's pretty much a terminal degree. Genetic counseling, right? Masters of genetic counseling. On the practice side is, for all intents and purposes, a terminal degree. But very few masters are that. And ours was designed to be a companion to a professional degree, either now or later, or an on the way to a PhD. So that's how we think about it. But the research ethics concentration, interestingly, has allowed folks to end up, with jobs in research ethics and regulation with the IRBs, IRB specialist, IRB manager, some other areas as well. We've had students end up with jobs at the NIH. So it's one area where you might you really have a much more realistic possibility of getting a job just with the MA, even though the program really not designed for that. Okay, research ethics and regulation core course, first semester. So that would take one of your elective slots. Research ethics journal club. You can see it very similar. The structure of the concentration here is just like the structure of MSc, but the placeholders are filled with research ethics content, and then ethics electives that are really focused on research ethics. And one of your practicums will be a research ethics practicum that'll take the place of one of your rotations. And what we've had students with placement in IRBs, with offices of human subjects research protection, compliance offices, you name it. And they will generally stay in those settings for the entire semester. So they could be reviewing informed consents for IRBs. There are all kinds of possibilities. But that's the research ethics concentration. And if you find yourself especially interested in research ethics issues and you think you might want a regulatory trajectory, right? An ethics and law, ethics and regulation trajectory, this could be a good concentration for you. The other population, audience for this would be folks who are engaged in research or plan to be engaged in research and just would like to have a stronger background in research ethics. So the concentration could work for those folks as well. Next slide. All right, so our clinical rotations are, with our 4 affiliates, the Cleveland Clinic, Metro Health, the VA, and university hospitals. Metro Health and the VA in the middle are, as I mentioned, public hospitals. The Metro Health system is kind of the region's safety net. It has a higher percentage of its population is indigent, and still, percentage is uninsured, although certainly not as bad as it was, pre-ACA, or what's come to be called Obamacare. I think everybody knows about the Cleveland Clinic and its global reach, its reputation for excellence and kind of cutting edge clinical innovation. What fewer folks probably know is that the Lewis B. Stokes VA is the 2nd largest in the country and is also an outstanding educational and research institution. And the VA and Metro Health have relationships with the Case School of Medicine that go back more than 100 years, actually. University Hospitals of Cleveland also a long-standing relationship with the School of Medicine that goes back over 100 years. And we are very fortunate to have these amazing affiliate institutions at which you can get good clinical observation experience. Leah, since you've run the rotations for several years now, do you want to chime in on this?
Sure. Yeah, I would, sorry, frog in my throat. One thing I would, just add is that while, on paper, you're like, wow, this is amazing to be able to rotate at these institutions. I think what doesn't always come across that I think is really good for students to know is that each of these institutions values bioethics, values clinical ethics. And so not only do they allow our students to rotate, but they have employees who focus in bioethics, clinical ethics, research ethics, neuroethics, and can specifically address and speak to the ethical issues that are unique to that institution. And so we are fortunate that when students get together on a weekly basis with their preceptor groups, we have individuals from these institutions that know the culture of that hospital, that know the bioethics issues of that hospital very specifically. And so it makes for a really great weekly discussion to better understand these institutions and how bioethics functions and moves throughout the system as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Leah. There really are some amazing things at these institutions, and our students, Leah is absolutely right, Dr. Jeanette, that fortunately each of those institutions in their own way afford our students the opportunity to observe, but do value. And it's clear there's a commitment to bioethics and medical humanities, so it really helps. The capstone I talked about earlier, right? So you work with a faculty person on a topic of mutual interest. You meet regularly, 22 to 25 pages. A lot of our students will call it their thesis. It's not technically a thesis, but it's kind of like that. But that's our bioethics capstone and medical humanities capstone, very important. Our study abroad. We have go ahead, Leah.
I was gonna say, this is the slide that is like heartbreaking to me.
Yes.
Right now.
So last year we had to cancel these. This year we had to cancel these, at least the in-country portion. But we normally, in a normal year, we have some pretty darn amazing international collaborations with great colleagues in, as you see, Costa Rica, Grenada, Spain, Paris, France, Amsterdam, the Netherlands, here, not international, but the national parks. And these tend to be either over winter break, but more often over spring break in March, or what's called second spring in May. And they can be 1 or 2 weeks in length. They're 3 credits. We get you ready vis-a-vis the course content with several sessions ahead of time. But the bulk of the teaching is done either in country or in the national parks, if we have the Yellowstone opportunity that we developed a couple of years ago, 2019. And you're taught by colleagues at these institutions that we collaborate with. So it's, you know, it's pretty amazing. It's the LEM in Paris, France, which is the Laboratoire of Laboratory of Medical Ethics. The René Descartes number 5, which is one of the oldest, you know, medical schools and University of Paris institutions in Paris. I mean, University of Paris goes back, you know, as far, it's like Oxford and then Salamanca in Spain, the oldest universities in Europe. Amsterdam, the Netherlands, you see the bikes, that's the bikes parked in the beautiful canal in Amsterdam. We have a very popular course on death, dying, and euthanasia in the Netherlands and the United States, you know, intercultural, intersocietal comparisons. Granada, the Granada course is really about bioethics and film. So you know, you get these, some of the films are Spanish, some are American, some are other, but it's really looking at, especially Spanish and US perspectives, but drawing those out through bioethics and film. And excellent colleagues there in the philosophy department at the University of Granada. The Costa Rica course is typically on health systems. The Costa Rica's health system was developed primarily out of public health concerns back in the 30s. And actually, as FDR was here in the United States, was pushing big programs with social safety nets. So really interesting to look at what's happened with our healthcare system and what it looks like, and what a much smaller but public health focused health system in Costa Rica looks like. Anyway, we could talk about these all day, so we'll let it go from there, but we hope these will be rolling again for when you're in the program. Okay, we have dual degree programs with nursing, with the Mandel School in social work, with the School of Medicine, medical education, with the law school, with our, it's called PQHS, Population Quantitative Health Sciences. Our Masters of Public Health is under them. And then with our Department of Genetics and Genomics that has one of the top genetic counseling programs in the country. We also have, although no one's availed themselves of this in a while, a dual degree where there's a Ph.D. in genetics and a master's in bioethics and medical humanities. The key for this is that you apply to each program separately. You have to be accepted in each program separately. So bioethics and the School of the medical school or the law school or whatever. And then you can do the dual degree pending the permission of your advisors and that all involved think it's advisable for you and that you can manage it. Next slide.
So one thing I just want to add about the dual degree is if anyone has questions specifically about what the dual degree program that they're interested looks like, you know, feel free to contact us. We can provide you kind of rough sketch of what that, you know, if you're looking at the MDMA, what that 4 years would look like, or the JDMA, what those 3 years would look like. Because sometimes that can help visually think about what the dual degree programs look like in a more practical sense as well.
Yeah, and each has a pattern of enrollment. They tend to be very complicated because you're trying to bring two programs together and gain some efficiency by allowing students to do them both at the same time and double counting a certain number of hours, so you also have some cost saving. But they tend to be complex, and you need to look at each individually based on your interest. Leah, do you want to talk about Dr. Jeanette, financial aid and
Sure. Yeah, so we have a couple of different options. For students, we have something called student assistantships. This is something very unique that we are able to offer. Not many master's programs are able to offer tuition waivers or partial tuition waivers as we do. So we are very excited to be able to offer this opportunity. When students apply, they are looking at slots essentially that focus either on teaching, research, or administrative opportunities. We have students every year that apply and they're quite competitive. And so we encourage students to get your general program application as quickly as you can so that you can complete your student assistantship application quickly as well. On average, this past year, students received around $5,000 in student assistantships. You know, every year, the amount of money that's available varies. And so we also look at both need and merit for students. And so these, while they are competitive, we do consider both of those factors. There's also a wonderful financial aid office at Case Western Reserve. They do wonderful work to help students identify funding sources. So all students applying for financial aid are required to fill out FAFSA. And of course, there's traditional financial aid options, grants, loans, scholarships, even work study. And we would encourage you to set an appointment with the financial aid office and talk to them directly about what your options are. And if you're interested in learning more about the tuition and fees, you can look at those numbers directly through graduate studies. And so just kind of moving us forward, we our application process. So we have some required materials in order for a complete application to be reviewed. So we ask students to send all transcripts. Initially, for application review purposes, you can send unofficial transcripts, but ultimately, if you are admitted to the program and you choose to enroll, you do have to send official transcripts. We ask for a statement of purpose. And what we're looking for in the statement of purpose is 1 to 2 pages to better understand your interest in bioethics and medical humanities and how bioethics and medical humanities fits into your career path. So why is this program a good fit for you? What about this program interests you? And how do you see this lining up with your career path? We ask for your CV or resume, and then we ask for 2 letters of recommendation, including 1 faculty, well, there's a typo there, including 1 faculty recommendation. Once we have a complete application, we have it reviewed by someone on the admissions committee team. And after that, we then interview students. So when we do our interviews, they can be done either telephone or the ever popular Zoom. And it's a way for us to get to know you. But the one thing that we're really looking for is mutual fit. So we not only want to make sure that applicants are a good fit for our program, but we also want to make sure that our program is the right fit for you, because there could be a circumstance where, there's something very specific that you're looking at, and it's only through that interview process that we're able to ascertain really if we're able to meet those needs. And so we are very happy to be able to offer those interviews to applicants. Just a general timeline for us to review. So our next deadline is March 1st, and that is for integrated graduate studies. Those are for current undergrads at Case Western Reserve applying to do our master's program during their final year of education at Case. The priority 2 deadline is May 15th. If you want to apply for student assistantships, we ask that your general program application is submitted by May 15th. And then you would submit the student assistantship application by June 1. Our ultimate final deadline for applications is August 1st. So we have a rolling application up until that point. And then orientation and classes begin late August. It seems like August is so far away, but time moves quickly. So we encourage you to get your applications in as soon as you can. So a little bit about Cleveland. Mark, would you like to talk a little bit about Cleveland? You and I are both from Cleveland, so we are very passionate about being from Cleveland and living here.
Well, Cleveland is a really unusual city because it has a cultural richness that you would have to be in, New York City or San Francisco, to a lesser extent, Chicago, Minneapolis, St. Paul, to experience. But and yet it's a very affordable city. And what you have in University Circle, which is where Case Western is the top freestanding art museum in the country, which is amazing. And that is true, pretty much every ranking that does freestanding art museums has the Cleveland Museum of Art. Its collection is phenomenal. People travel here from all over the world to see the Cleveland Museum of Art's collection, and it's free to anybody who wants to go in and experience the beauty of the collection. We have here just up Euclid Avenue, a bus ride away, a short car ride away, Playhouse Square, which is the largest and most vibrant performing arts venue in the country outside of Broadway, which is pretty damn amazing. And that's not something you probably associate with Cleveland. But performing arts, the history here from the old industrialists, just like the Cleveland Museum of Art, really an amazing history. Lots of actors and actresses from Cleveland. Halle Berry's from Cleveland. Tom Hanks was with Great Lakes Theater. There's a boatload. Drew Carey's the one people think of, I suppose, more recently. The Cleveland Orchestra is globally 1, 2, or 3, nationally nearly always 1 or 2. Wins the Time Magazine Best Band in the Land year in and year out. Also, right here in University Circle, Severance Hall, where the orchestra plays, a very historic building, Art Deco style, and is considered to be as good a place to listen to music, certainly classical music, as exists in the country and competes with any setting in the world. Of course, we have our sports teams, but we also have, our Indians, whose name is going to change to we don't know what. Our Browns, which we don't have to be embarrassed about anymore. They're back, and of course the Cleveland Cavaliers, who won the championship in 2016, is a very affordable place to live. East 4th, which is downtown in a what was pre-pandemic a really vibrant little corridor, which we hope and expect will come back after the pandemic. But what's happened in Cleveland, like a lot of cities, is the downtown residential market has remained strong. It's even strong during COVID. And so there's actually kind of a 24-hour city in the core city, a 24-hour life there. And we've had students and faculty and staff who actually live down in downtown Cleveland and come out to University Circle, which is just a few miles away to the east. And then Little Italy, which is right in University Circle, very, abuts the campus of Case Western. Used to be a densely Italian area. It's only, I think, 18% Italian now. A lot of students, a lot of professionals, a lot of Case folks live in Little Italy. But you still have the history, you still have the culture. Some amazing bakeries. Looking at Presti's right here is making me hungry. Let's not do that. But they're really good things. So Cleveland's an interesting city that is very affordable and has an amazing cultural richness that is, pretty hard to match. Peter B. Lewis, who founded Progressive Insurance, wanted University Circle. So he died a few years back. He wanted University Circle to be what it should be, which is this pulled together area of cultural jewels that is unlike any in the country. And he didn't get to see it happen exactly, but he gave a big push in that direction. And, you know, we are very close to there now, where it's an incredible place to live and certainly to study and to be a student and to be able to access. And actually, you know, not to have to wonder if you're going to be able to get into a play or, you know, we have 36,000 season ticket holders at Playhouse Square, but there's still tickets available. You can get in. The orchestra routinely sells out, but there's special student tickets. And of course, you know, the other stuff is quite accessible and available. Other amenities in University Circle, the botanical gardens are here, which is pretty darn amazing. We have the Wade Lagoon. There's outdoor skating, and we have the beautiful, what is really gorgeous and just finished, say, right before the pandemic, the Nord Greenway that connects the campus and the Maltz Museum, or not the Maltz Performing Arts Center, sorry, a bit away. Anyway, okay, enough about Cleveland, but we could sell Cleveland pretty hard.
I always joke that it's the external PR that Cleveland doesn't have going on well. We have a lot going on, it's just people don't always know it.
Yes, and one of the things that's pretty amazing is the people who move here, colleagues in the School of Medicine, are like, man, this is really nice. Had a woman move here to take over fundraising for the Cleveland Orchestra. And I met her at, actually the chair of genetics and genomics hosted a get together with a quintet at his house. And she came and she said she could not believe, she'd moved here from Seattle. And she said, I cannot believe that I can live here for the cost. And yet you have all these nice things. And she was on and on. I mean, she was sold on Cleveland in like 2 months. Anyway, that's a fairly common experience.
And as an outsider, I'll even say that that's true as like, because I moved here as a student first, moved away, came back as a student. I'm not even from the state of Ohio. And so obviously that's a whole thing when you're not from Ohio and you're from Michigan. But moving here, it was really neat because I never want to move away from Cleveland. Now I would like to stay in Cleveland forever. So even as an outsider, I can attest to that and say, yes, that's true. So.
Well, thank you, Sam. So questions?
Yeah, so I'm seeing a couple questions. So the first one says, can you explain how the IGS program works for bioethics and medical humanities? That's a great question.
Yeah, so the first thing you need, so IGS is Integrated Graduate Studies, and in a way it's another dual degree, right? But what you do is you're finishing up your undergraduate degree, and then you complete the master's program in bioethics and medical humanities, just as you're tying up, you know, whatever loose ends remain, usually just a capstone, an undergraduate capstone or something like that. The first place you have to go to look at IGS is to your undergraduate advisor, because the gatekeeper for IGS is the College of Arts and Sciences. If they say, yeah, we think that you could handle IGS and that you're far enough along that we'll consider you, you know, with your coursework, then you apply to the IGS program and you apply to our program. And from there, it's really like applying to a graduate program, because it is applying to a graduate program. You're just doing it without your degree in hand. We have, how many do we have this year?
I believe we have 16 or 17 this year.
We have a lot of IGS students.
We had 20.
Yeah, the 16 and the 20 are among the largest we've ever had.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's one of the few ways that we found in the last 30 years to make higher ed a little more cost effective, because you're going to come out with a master's and a bachelor's, which is, you know, for pretty much the same price. So we hope that continues to thrive. So other detail you'll get from your undergraduate advisor. And of course, you know, offline, we could point you in the direction. Okay.
I will also add, we're hosting an IGS open house next
There
week
you go.
on Wednesday, February 17th at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And so if you're interested, we would love to have you join us. We have some emails that'll be going out. And so that's a great way to hear specifically how IGS works with bioethics and medical humanities. The nice thing is, because we are a one-year program, it very seamlessly fits into the senior year. You know, other IGS programs across the university take longer. And so it's a little more scheduling that's required. And so ours, I feel like ours fits a little bit easier overall into the schedule.
And I will say that the link to that event will be up on the website by tomorrow morning. So if you wanted to register for that, that'll be up tomorrow morning. And the email will also be going out tomorrow morning. So either way, hopefully everything will be within reach soon.
Great.
Thank you, Sam.
We have one other question in the last minute we have. The clinical ethics rotation sounds amazing. How is your program adapting them to the pandemic? That's a great question.
It is. And I think that we made a pretty good innovation here.
I agree.
Do you want to describe it?
Yeah. So what we've done is we still maintain our relationships with the 4 healthcare institutions, the teaching hospitals here in Cleveland. And we still assign students to their preceptor groups, and they get together on a weekly basis with fellow students and a clinical ethicist or someone from that institute, from one of the institutions, to talk about, you know, clinical ethics. What we've adapted is to being virtual. So because of PPE shortages, because of just safety concerns from not just from CASE itself, but from the hospitals, all of those things, we felt that in-person rotation just wasn't something we could offer this year. And so we adapted it to virtual. So what we do is we invite physicians, nurses, social workers, chaplains, researchers in all different departments from all different institutions, and we aren't even limiting ourselves to the 4 institutions this year. We've actually invited people from outside those healthcare teaching hospitals as well, to come on Zoom and give students an hour of their time. And so they talk about what their role is in healthcare or related to healthcare, what ethical issues they face in their role, and then they bring a case or two to discuss with students. What's amazing is that, you know, sometimes when students are doing the traditional rotations, they go to a morning ICU round. And while really interesting, it is heavily focused on the medicine, as it should be. And the attending is very busy, and they may not have time to sit down with that student and talk about the ethical issues for each patient, you know, explicitly. This allows that. This allows us to have their attention for an hour and a half. And it allows students to ask questions directly and to better understand what their area of healthcare looks like. We had, like I said, we had a variety. We're actually looking forward to doing it again this semester. We've already, you know, started scheduling some of our speakers. One new speaker we've scheduled this year, she is the former head of Adult Protective Services. So this is like, think of Child Protective Services, but for elderly folks. And that we see a lot in clinical ethics when it comes to discharge planning, their care at hospitals. And so we're excited to have her come and speak about her time as the head of Adult Protective Services in Cuyahoga County. So it's the adaptation has been really great. And we hear very positive feedback from students. And I can see in our future where we will incorporate some of this as we move down and we go back to in-person rotations as well. I know our time is up. We did get one question, which I think we could answer pretty quick, Mark. Curious if current or future therapists or psychologists are welcome into this program.
Yes, certainly. And we don't have a dual degree, with psychology, but we would be more than happy to have somebody who's current or on their way, because I mean the fit is it's a pretty good one, and we do have each year we have a handful of students who are non-traditional. They could be mid-career, they could be beginning career, they could be toward the end and looking for a transition, who do our program. Some do it full-time, some do it part-time, but we're, you know, to me, that adds to the richness of the program. And I think that, I mean, we have a person who was over the Student Health Center for about 30 years, who transitioned, did our program, and is of the belief that every person going into healthcare should do a program like this. I don't know about, we couldn't handle that, but I'll take her word for her assessment of the value.
Well, great. So thank you to everyone who attended. I'm seeing that there's still questions coming in. What I'll say, if you have more questions, we would love to speak more with you about your interest in our program. I would be happy to set up one-on-one conversations with you to talk about your interest, how our program fits into your career path, and to see you know, how we could make that work for you. So thank you so much to Dr. Mark Aulisio for sharing with us about the program. Thank you to Sam Hamilton for helping with the tech side as well. So the best way to get a hold of us is bioethics@case.edu. So shoot us an email and we'll respond to you, and we can set up a time to chat or answer your question via email if that's easier. So thank you everyone so much.
Thanks a lot. Bye, everybody.